Good evening, Reds. Welcome to your pre-match review or preview, as you could say, for tomorrow's League Cup match against Leicester City. My name's Charlie. I'm your host tonight. We have the wonderful Drew, who stepped in very, very last minute. He's doing a shift this week for the second of third appearances. So you're going to get your appearance fee this week, Drew. How are you?
Sounds good to me, but doing good. Excited for the game tomorrow. It's hopefully the elation from the weekend win against West Ham carries over into another win against Leicester.
Yeah. Well, it's always one of those where we can't seem to get rid of Leicester, but we'll take it as it comes. How are you, Race? You good?
Yeah, good. We're kind of in this mode of midweek games. It's a lot of fun to have a lot of games to talk about for sure.
Yeah. The games are coming, thick and fast, as they say, don't they? So lots to talk about, lots to consider. We seem to be in a really good position, aren't we, in terms of form and the players that are coming in. There's lots to talk about in today's stream. The first thing I just want to say is thank you for everyone that's joined today. If you could just like and subscribe, leave a comment as well. There's going to be lots of discussions today, so I want to get your input. We're going to talk about the formation. We're going to be talking about the starting 11. Players that aren't going to be available to us today, for tomorrow's game. So there's going to be lots to talk about itself. And just one last thing, the American Stars and Stripes and Anfield Nights is on tonight. So please, if you can, give it a watch, give it a like. The guys that do the show is just brilliant. So yeah, really, really appreciate everyone that can come on. Okay, so bit of admin's all done. We're going to kick off with a little bit of news from the press conference that Pep Lijnders held today. Some of the things that he was discussing. So we'll kick off with one. The first topic of that is Trent Alexander-Arnold. Now he's back. He's back from injury. He's had a good break, let's say. He had that injury just before the international break. Drew, how much of a bonus is it for Trent to be back? And do you think he'll make an appearance? Do you think he'll be on the bench starting for tomorrow's game?
Definitely great news to have him back. Just obviously such a pivotal play for us moving forward. Don't like to see him out of the lineup for too long, but credit to Joe Gomez for getting a job done while he's been out. Basetic as well, stepping in. But definitely need to have Trent back in the starting lineup and available. As for minutes tomorrow, I don't see him starting. I definitely see him getting minutes, because you'd want to at least get him up to speed or get some minutes in the legs with an eye on Tottenham this weekend. So maybe Klopp does start him for 45 minutes just to get some minutes in the legs. But I do think he should get time on the field. I don't know how long and in what capacity, but just with an eye on Tottenham on the weekend, I wouldn't want him to just go start that game cold, not having played in 3 weeks or so. So I think it's important for him to get some touches on the ball in a game situation. But we'll see what Pep and Klopp decide.
Yeah, red, white, and red has raised a really interesting point around Trent earning his spot back. Joe's played really, really well over the last kind of couple of games. Even being called out by Pep in his press conference. I'll stick with you just really quickly there, Drew. But do you think that's actually more of a long-term view? Trent needs to kind of earn his spot back. More of a case that he just needs to get those minutes back in his legs. Do you think tomorrow's an ideal opportunity before the Spurs game? Just like what you said.
I don't necessarily know if he needs to earn his spot back. I think it's quite clear that he's the number one and right back, at least unless Klopp wants to play him in the midfield going forward. But especially with the rumors around him in contract negotiations, being prepared to be one of the topper echelon of wage earners at the club, I think that kind of speaks for itself where he is in the pecking order. But I do think it almost reminds me of like Robertson Moreno situation. Obviously very different, but the idea of like once Robertson had the spot, it wasn't ever going to be given up, even if he was out for a week or two. And Moreno did put in some good games towards the end of his career at Liverpool, but just could never get it back. But I think it's one of those ones where Gomez has not done himself wrong or poorly in any way. He's shown that he can step up and do a shift, especially when you get a run of games. I think that's what he's been missing in our side. So I think it's like Gomez has put himself in the spotlight for Klopp, saying that like I can do a job, and then like God forbid Trent, just doesn't come back well, then maybe Gomez does get a chance to stake a claim, or maybe in the center back spots as well. But Gomez has definitely done a good job and put himself up to Klopp and Linders as making it a tough decision on how to move forward. But as of now, I don't think Trent loses his position or has to earn it back.
Yeah. So that's the long-term view. But Race, so the last time that we did a bit of a rotation in terms of the squad was the last game, and Bajcetic played at right back and had that that inverted right back role. We'll leave Trent on the bench. I think that's probably the right thing to do. But would you go with Bajcetic or Gomez in that right back position? Which one would you go for?
Well, given the rotation that we'll see with this side, I wouldn't. If you want to, give Bajcetic minutes, I think that would kind of be a good. I wouldn't mind seeing him back in that role again, because I think he maybe didn't start out great against Leicester, but I thought he grew well into the game. And remember, those were his first minutes of the season, so for him to come in that position in an unfamiliar role for him and not look too out of place was impressive for him. So I think. We'll talk about the lineup. I'm sure who's going to be. This would be with the center backs, and I think maybe QUANSAH will be back there, and then kind of who's next to him. I think Gomez could it be a shout for that other start the other center defense spot. So that would then leave someone to play that right back spot if it's not going to be Gomez. So I think that's kind of an ideal situation for me, is putting Bajcetic back in that spot, because as we were seeing already, our depth is being tested, and just the more looks that we can get at players who can fill in for positions, I think is a good thing. So, and Gomez, based on his performance, at the weekend, I think deserves another chance in the lineup, especially in a cup game where I don't think we're too concerned of him having a bad game, or at least we hope he doesn't, just for the level of competition. So, because I think ideally, we kind of want Gomez to be a better center back, because that's kind of what he's been when he's been at his best in his team. That's where he's been. So we want to see him thrive in that role, but can no doubt put in a good shift and be good in that right back spot. But Bajcetic for me, I think would be my pick to go there. Especially, I agree with you guys with Trent, not starting this game, but certainly getting minutes. But just to start off, I think Bajcetic would be a good move in that spot.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So, we'll move to the centre-backs positions then. The options that are available, we seem to have lots of options in terms of centre-backs now. So you still got the main man, the captain, Virgil van Dijk. You got Konate. Matip played really well on the weekend. Joe Gomez that we just discussed. QUANSAH as well. I don't think I'm missing anyone. But, Race, I'll stick with you. Who would be your two picks for tomorrow, considering we've got such a big game coming up on the weekend?
Well, it's interesting. I was just kind of thinking about, who's that's going to be, and kind of looking at our last lineups, because, Konate didn't start at the weekend. It was Matip next to Van Dijk. And seeing this being a cup game, I think, QUANSAH would be a good shout to be in that lineup as well. This is kind of the game where the youngsters get their running. But of course, you have the Spurs game at the weekend, and I think, our best pairing is Van Dijk and Konate. So, giving Konate 2 starts in a row, midweek and then a big game at the weekend maybe doesn't make sense, but at the same time, he didn't play in our last game. So I'm just trying to see what happens there. Cause again, we can, do the one half is one center back and the second half is another one. We can sometimes do that luxury in these cup games. Of course, the side we're going up against is certainly no slouch. We shouldn't be, thinking Leicester going to be, a walk in the park, certainly. I would definitely have QUANSAH in there, and I guess kind of what I said with Gomez or Konate, I think would be one of those two. I can't quite say which one I would have. It's kind of tough to decide for me.
It's a real tough one.
Yeah, I think either one of those two. I mean, certainly not Van Dijk and certainly not Matip. So I think it'd be down to Konate or Gomez, whichever. And again, it depends on that right back spot. If you want to put Gomez in that right back spot, then you would put Konate, I think, in the center back. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and he just poses this. It's a good headache, isn't it? I guess with so many options. Drew, who do you think? Who would you go with at your right back and your centre back pairings?
I'm a bit torn on this one. I agree with Race on Basetic as the right back, although I'd love to see him back in the center midfield. I just don't. I think we need him at right back, and giving Endo and Gravenberch and center mid definitely seems like the right move. But for center back, I'm torn. I think Kwanzaa definitely will be one of those center backs. But as for the other pairing, the only one I'm not sure or know for sure won't be there is Matip, because I don't see him playing
You can't play 2 weeks.
any part in yeah.
Right.
Exactly. That's the safe bet there. But I'm torn because I wouldn't want to throw Kwanzaa into the deep end. I know this is early rounds of the League Cup, but we drew Leicester, and from what I've seen, read, and heard about them in the Championship, they're doing bits, and they have players that can be pretty intimidating. Vardy's pace. You got Iheanacho. Even Albrighton can sometimes be tricky. Like, they've got some good players in their lineup, and they're gonna have a point to prove after performing so poorly. So part of me wants to see Van Dijk partner Kwanzaa at least for the first 60 minutes to just keep it cool. Like, we know Van Dijk can play multiple games a week, and it shouldn't be too strenuous on him to maybe do a 60-minute shift and still play this weekend. So I kind of would want to see that to ease the pressure off Kwanzaa. But I also see Joe Gomez. He can lead in those roles, even though sometimes he's prone to a mistake or two. So my choice would be Van Dijk, but I could easily see it being Gomez, and wouldn't mind that as well.
Yeah, so you're going with quite a experienced, centre back pairing and right back as well. But I'll play devil's advocate. Leicester are playing really, really well. The top of the league, scoring goals. Jamie Vardy seems to be, full of life once again. The man that never dies as such. So. Yeah, I mean, my personal opinion, what I would go for is Gomez right back, because he's just got that experience at right back to deal with Albrighton, or whoever's playing on that left side for Leicester these days. Also, the pace that Jamie Vardy has. You look at Konate, he just needs to have minutes, because he is, for me, my number one pick to play alongside Virgil. So the sooner we can get minutes in his legs, the better. I understand, the West Ham game was a good one for Matip, but ideally the long run, throughout the whole season, it's going to be Konate that's going to play the majority of games at centre back for me. So the sooner we can get him back up to speed, the better. Kwanzaa probably would be my pick, because he got that little bit of youth against the experience that Konate, even though he's quite young, can bring. So yeah, it would be really, really interesting. I think we all agree, and I think Pep has already kind of confirmed about the goalkeeper position, is Kelleher for tomorrow's game. So I guess he's our cup keeper for this season, probably domestic cups. So I don't know if there's much discussions on there, but it's a good outing for him. He played really well against Lask, didn't he? Kind of kept us in the game with a couple of saves that he did do. I'll ask you about left back then, guys. Drew, I'll start with you. So you got the options really of Joe Gomez could play left back. We know that in the past. You got Tsimikas, who's just signed a new contract, or you go with the experience of Andy Robertson. Who would be your pick for left back?
I think Tsimikas. Timing of the contract, just this early in the competition, he hasn't played that many games. It just screams out Tsimikas for this one. I don't see the necessity to bring on Robertson, especially with the big Spurs game coming up. He's going to need to have his full energy, full rest, because he's going to be running a lot in that game. So Tsimikas, as much as I'd like to see Joe Gomez reprise the left back role that he first started with the club way back under Rodgers, I think Tsimikas is the nailed on starter for left back.
Yeah. Okay. Helia has thrown in an absolute worldie of a stat. Race, I'll ask you about this one. So Liverpool have not won a League Cup tie in normal time at Anfield in the last 7 matches. Now, does that concern you? in terms of the games that we're trying to play. With these League Cup games, it's not like FA Cups where there's a replay. Essentially, the game is going to be finishing on the night. So, there's going to be extra time, or certainly we'll go to penalties anyway if it does kind of finish at 90. Does that kind of concern you that we are kind of struggling to finish off teams in the League Cup?
Yeah, that's kind of a surprising stat, or maybe not, given our history in the League Cup. Although we just won it a couple of years ago, so but I remember we had a couple of. I remember one or two of those games did go to penalties. I know that the Leicester one
Leicester
we
game,
had.
yeah, the Leicester game went to penalties, didn't it?
The
And
crazy one, I
dropped
think we came back. Yeah, Minamino had the equalizer, I think. But yeah, I mean, it's sometimes, I mean, I think a lot of, big clubs do this. They certainly, with the rotated sides that we have and kind of the drastic nature of, we're going to be replacing almost the entire, I imagine, starting 11, and, certainly these early round games, if you get a bad draw, or if you get another Premier League team or another quality side like Leicester, and it's not like some, League One or League Two side, you're going to be in for a battle. So, we certainly, I think with the, just looking across the board at our kind of what our projected lineup would look like, I mean, there's not going to be any, true youth academy players. At least we don't think, there's not going to be any of that, too much youth in this team. It's a lot of experienced players or younger players that, we rely upon. So, certainly something that's, that's an interesting stat to come up with, or to have. And, it just kind of, it shows, you can't take any opponent for this in this competition for granted. Like you said, Leicester, they're top of the championship right now. They have a point to prove, of getting relegated last year. They want to get right back up to it. So this is a good test for them, against one of the best Premier League sides, for them to show that they're back. So yeah, that's an interesting stat. And it's something to think about.
So I'll ask you really, really quickly. Flowers, thank you for joining us, Flowers, again, as always. Simi will need a game. Do you agree with that? Drew, you kind of confirmed that Tsimikas would be your choice for tomorrow. He'd be my choice as well, for starting tomorrow's game. Do you think he should play?
Yeah, I think you look at Kelleher and Tsimikas are like the two nailed on Cup/Europa League guys. Like they're going to be the first names on our team sheet, just given that they're both quality backups. They're both proven senior players. Like you don't have any, reservations really about them in competitions like this, when they're playing. So we all, recognize the importance of getting all your players, rotated and getting some minutes. And of course, the contract that Tsimikas just signed just kind of further proves how much we value him kind of in his role and how much he, values his role. I mean, it's pretty remarkable that a guy, and not to say that Tsimikas is some world beater, but certainly I think he's maybe overqualified to be a backup left back, but he's certainly accepted that role. And, I know he didn't have a great game against Lask. Hopefully he can put in a better game today. So, but yeah, certainly my pick for left back.
Right. So Haley has come back and he's throwing in another absolute tap in. The last time that we won a Carabao Cup or League Cup in normal time was against Leeds in 2016. That was when a very, very young Ben Woodburn scored and became, at that time, the club's youngest ever goal scorer. Yeah, I totally agree. Things have happened since then. A lot of information. But yeah, that's an absolute world. It's really interesting that since 2016, we've struggled to get over the line with these League Cup games. And red, white, and red. It's a really interesting question. I'll put this to you because it's about priorities for Klopp and the club itself. Does Klopp care about this cup? Do you? Should we? Drew, I'll ask you. Do you think Klopp cares about this cup, considering that he sends out Pep to do the press conferences before the game? Do you think he's actually bothered about the League Cup?
I think he is, to an extent. I think the Pep for the press conferences just speaks to how involved everyone is with the team and how everyone, Klopp says from top to bottom how important everyone is at the club. And I think he likes to give the spotlight to different people at different times. So think that's a reflection of the press conferences. But as far as the competition itself, I don't think he did when he first came in. Like, it definitely seemed like he didn't view it as a priority. Started very weak lineups deep into competitions, but that hasn't been the case in the last couple seasons, especially when we won.
Where we won it, yeah.
But yeah, I also think, but that pairs with how good our bench is and how good our backup squad is. I think that's been the case in the last few years, especially the year we won it, and then this year I think we have an even better B squad than we've had in, as far as I can remember, last 10 years. Because when we get to further up the field for our lineups with our striking options, it's absolutely ridiculous who we're going to have at our disposal to attack teams. And this early in the competition, I remember back in like Rogers, Benitez days, where you're starting like 17-year-olds, like kids you'd never heard of, or their numbers were like in the 70s on their backs. It was it was a good chance to see some young players, but not a good chance of seeing us go through the competition. So I do think Klopp takes it a little more seriously, and I think winning silverware is always a good thing. And for me, it's about building a habit of winning, and I think Klopp takes that seriously. And on each day, he wants to win the game.
Yeah, and I think again, Flowers, a great comment. Just to agree, the second string, the squad is so much better, isn't it, Race, in terms of where we were just a few seasons ago. I know we've spoken about the incomings that we desperately need for this summer, but looking at the squad and the options, we've already spoken about the centre back pairings, haven't we? And just the sheer number of players available to us at that centre back and right back kind of makes it really a bit of a quandary for Klopp. But you must agree with this. The squad is a lot better than what it was just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, definitely. And you just look at the players that, and that kind of speaks to the strength of our starting 11 too. Because we have such a strong starting 11 that there's no real bench players that are going to kind of break into that team. We kind of want our starting 11 solidified with the good rotation as well. So when we come to these midweek games or cup competitions, Europa League, whatever, you have players that are in desperate need of minutes, and you can't afford to just give out some caps to some appearances to these youth players. You want to give your senior players that haven't played a lot of minutes, and you look at the senior players that are going to come into this game, like the Hawks of Harvey Elliott, Gravenberch, of course, Endo just got here. I mean, those are, and looking at the top, like Jota and Gakpo, like those are players that, need minutes and deserve to get a start here. And we can't just be overlooking them in favor of kind of seeing what we have in the youth side. So, it's definitely, kind of like what Drew said in the first few years of Klopp, it wasn't his full team. It takes years to kind of get all your guys in both the senior team and in the academy as well. So now we've really seen in these last few years just a better side that we're able to put out in these competitions. And of course, when and to go on the point of does Klopp care about the competition stuff? It's kind of the thing of, oh, well, if you're doing well in the cup, then you care more about it. If you're not doing well in the cup, you don't care about it. And that's kind of the success we've had. Although in the first year that Klopp came in, we made the League Cup final. But it's kind of how we do in the cup kind of reflects our commitment level to it sometimes. And of course, remember we had the 1 year where we had the Club World Cup, and then we had the League Cup. I think it was like the day after, and we just basically had to give up on that competition because that's just how the schedule flip sometimes. So when you see Pep at the press conference, people can say, oh, Klopp doesn't care. Well, the other way of looking at it is, like you said, giving that giving some spotlight to someone else in the team, like you said, values everyone within the club. So it's definitely nice now that we look at these teams that are going in, we can be excited to see these players, and they can go out and perform, and if they have a good shift, then put themselves in contention for the next game or a couple of weeks. So it's good to see us being able to have a squad that can compete on multiple fronts.
Yeah. So, I mean, just going by memory, when we did win it the last time, I think it was that Leicester game that kind of changed it for a lot of fans. Up to that point, very much, the lowest priority. It wasn't something, if we went out, we went out. There's a bigger fish to fry in terms of the league and the League Cup. The league and the Champions League, wasn't it? But once we won that game and got into the last 8, getting to the last 4, that's when the priorities for Klopp obviously changed, and that meant changes to the formation. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. If we do get through, great. If not, then no love lost. I think it's just a case of other priorities, as it always should be. The league is going to be the priority. Europe, I think we should be taking more seriously as well, and we'll see how we can get on. So we've boxed off the goalkeeper and the centre back positions. Midfield is always going to be one for debate. So I'll ask you guys. We'll pick one position at a time. We'll start off with the central defensive midfield, the number 6 position, which is always up for debate these days. So Race, I'll start with you. So there's options really are. So Thiago's not playing. Pep's already kind of confirmed that he's unavailable, which is a shame. We'd like to see him back. But the options are McAllister, you got Endo, Basetic, Gravenberch could play at number 6 as well. Who would be your choice for tomorrow in terms of the opposition and trying to get a hold of the game?
I would lean towards Endo getting that spot, and I know I mentioned before by Chedish being that right back spot. If Gomez is going to possibly feature in that spot, I wouldn't mind seeing by Chedish either in that number 6. I think he performed well with us last year, and I think he can become a real player in that. But with Endo, I think we're just trying to give him, some minutes here that are positive, good play. I don't think he had a great game against Lask. We've kind of brought him in to kind of be that stopgap, solution. Certainly not the long-term solution, but certainly a player that we can rely upon. Can bring on in the game or make a spot start here and there. So I think we're just kind of looking for another positive, type performance from him, and I think this would be a good spot, for him. Again, rotated side and whatnot. So he would be my pick there.
And what about yourself there, Drew?
Yeah, I agree with Race. I think it's going to be Endo, and if Basetic doesn't play right back, then I'd put him up for it. But I think Endo deserves a start, and we'll probably see him.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I agree. I've put down Endo as my starting number 6, but it's going to be interesting who plays alongside him. Hellier, you kind of mentioned there, I just want to bring up your comment about Basetic being possibly the first choice defensive midfielder. In the long run, he needs to get time. He needs minutes in his legs so far. So yeah, I don't begrudge Klopp for making that decision. Personally, I think it should be Endo. The minutes that Basetic could be alongside Endo in another position, and we'll just quickly discuss that. So there's 2 spots. There's 2 other spots in midfield. The options are Gravenberch, Elliott, and then you got your star players, haven't you? The McAllisters that could play in those positions. Soboslai, whether we would like to give him more minutes, he's running himself into the ground. Play the monk for us. Drew, I'll start with you. Who would you go with as your pair to play alongside Endo?
I think it's Gravenberch and Elliott. I think they both deserve starts. They've been showing bright moments in the league, and this will be a good chance to give them good minutes and then get to show Klopp what they can offer going forward, put their name in the hat for more Premier League time.
Yeah. So Gravenberch, in the last game, he set up the goal, didn't he, for Diaz, which is great. I'm sure it was Diaz. But he came off injured. Now, it came off that the news that we had was it was just a bit of cramp because he essentially just run himself into the ground. Race, would you still go with Gravenberch considering the cramp that he had? Would he have recovered in time?
Yeah, well, he featured in the game, coming off the bench at the weekend at West Ham. So I think that kind of says that he's ready to play. I think again, you talk about bringing a new player and getting them acclimated to our team and our system. I think this is a good opportunity for him. We look at the other options with Soboslai and McAllister. They've kind of featured for us heavily in the last couple games. So I think if ideally you kind of give them hopefully a full 90 off if we don't need to bring them on or whatever. Although they may feature, of course. But I just look ahead to the Spurs game. You kind of want them well rested for that's going to be a real tough game. At Tottenham. That's kind of our first big test of the season, I think. And if you can keep those guys fresh and ready for that game, ideally, you use this, to get Gravenberch and Elliott, starts there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to see. I'm just, if Gravenberch starts, I'm interested to see kind of more of him. What surprised me about Gravenberch just kind of how big he is. Like, he's a big, tall guy in that midfield. I was kind of surprised at that. Yeah, and he's only 21 years old, and so when he played against Lask, I'm like, oh wow, this is a big dude out there. So I certainly hope to see him in this game and kind of kind of boss our midfield a little bit, because of course you have Elliott on the other side, and definitely not the stature that Gravenberch is. So kind of be that bruising midfielder there.
Yeah. Paul, thank you for joining. You never need to apologize on the stream, mate. We're just glad that you're here. In terms of the midfield, so Gravenberch, he showed real good touches. There was a few kind of misplaced passes, and that was kind of the whole of the midfield when it came to the last game, didn't it? A bit of trying too hard. He hadn't played any games for such a long time because of the situation with Bayern Munich. Wasn't really in the group as per se. So yeah, he wasn't really getting minutes, but it was really interesting, really, really encouraging that we saw some really, really good touches. Something that really helped me trying to understand how he plays was just his engine. Having the ability to run as much as he did. The goal that he did set up was just fantastic, wasn't it? So my choice would be Endo Gravenberch, but there's a question mark around about Elliott. I'll throw out another name because I think he can play. The game just gone midweek, and also again on the weekend against Spurs. Curtis Jones. Would people be, and this goes to the chat as well, would you be really concerned if Curtis Jones plays, because he has shown such great maturity over the last kind of 15, 16 games in a red shirt? Would you like to see him in the team race?
I wouldn't mind seeing him. Again, I think just the planning that we do ahead of Tottenham game. I think he's certainly contention to start that game. So I think if you have him starting that game, I don't think you want him playing in this one as well, or at least starting. But just to speak on Curtis Jones, I think he's definitely at times caught in some criticism, because he's not the most flashy player, and he's not this big purchase LeBron. He's just kind of one of our own, kind of coming through the side and slowly made his way to the team. But when he's gotten a good run in with the team, it's been inconsistent at times. So to give Curtis Jones his flowers, like, I think him being possibly starting for us at Tottenham at the weekend in a big game, I think is a credit to the work he's done. And I think he's starting to find his role a little bit more, and certainly an exciting player, possibly. So to see him in this League Cup game, I think he's maybe played himself out of contention, if that makes sense. Like, he's we want to play him at the weekend instead of pushing him back to these cup games. And that's kind of why Elliott would be the man to start in this game. So Curtis, coming into this season, you bring in all these new midfield players, and Curtis is thinking like, wow, I gotta work hard. I gotta, competition. I gotta up my game. And I think he's done that. And so that's good to see. That's kind of what it's excited me about bringing all these guys, is just bringing these players. It breeds competition. So I think, like I said, I think Curtis Jones maybe he's got ahead of himself, and now he's in contention to start the Tottenham game instead of this one.
Yeah. And what do you think, Drew? Would you give Curtis Jones, or do you think he's now reached the point where he's a starting 11 for the A team, as per se, not the B team? Do you think he's kind of in that upper bracket now and not considered a automatic starter in the cup games, like what we're seeing with Endo and Elliott?
I think he's put himself in the last couple games in that category, at least for now. I don't know if he'll hold that starting spot long term. I think Gravenberch has already shown what he can offer. as a starter. But for this one, I agree with Race. It would seem odd to start him in this match with Tottenham looming at the weekend, because I don't think Klopp likes to mix things around that much. And this is such a huge game against Tottenham. And Jones definitely puts in a shift. Like, one thing he does really well is he runs up and down the pitch all game. So I think that will definitely be needed at Tottenham. And Elliott hasn't had as many minutes as Jones, so I think he deserves to put in a shift there as well. So I think for the moment, it doesn't make sense to start Jones in the game on tomorrow, and Elliott deserves a start.
Yeah, I agree. El Hero, I totally agree. Jones was just unlucky. He was just moved a little bit too quickly for his goal. But yeah, lovely finish, great finish, wasn't it? Paul, yeah, we've quickly just discussed that just before you joined. We kind of all agreed. I'm pretty sure we all agreed. Endo would be the first choice for the defensive midfielder as the number 6, but we wouldn't be adverse to seeing Bajcetic if he starts the game or comes on later in the game if we are in a position where we've kind of wrapped up the game. Who knows? At the moment, Liverpool love to go 1-0 down and come back roaring in the second half. So who knows what could happen in that game itself. But yeah, so I think we all agree Endo, Gravenberg and Elliott probably would be the preference, the likely starting trio to start against a probably, really competitive Leicester side. So we'll move on to the front line. Again, I think the conversation today is kind of really reiterated the strength and depth in what we have in the squad right now. There may be certain aspects where we still want to have, one or two players, talking about this number 6 or the centre-back positions. But yeah, I totally agree. I'm just going to bring up another comment. I totally agree. It's nice to have so many options, eh? But yeah, we'll start with the front three. I'll ask you guys about the number 9 first. Drew, who would be your number 9? Your central striker. You got Nunez, Gakpo, Jota being your kind of main 3. Who would you go for, considering who could play on the left or and the right?
Say Gakpo or Jota. I think either one of those would be fine. And as we've seen, we usually have a free-flowing front 3 in most cases, so it doesn't concern me if it's Gakpo or Jota. I think both can, do the job or do that role justice. Jota can score. His minutes to goals ratio is pretty insane. It just seems like an amazing super sub for us at the moment, but I don't mind him starting at all. And then Gakpo has so much quality, dropping in deep, turning on the ball, and then sprinting at defenses. So I think there's so much quality there. And as we've been talking about it all stream, our depth is insane. But I think against Leicester, I'd want more control of the ball, so I'd put Gakpo up top just to have that extra person to be able to drop in and kind of relieve the pressure and the tension if we need to hold on to the ball and spray the passes, whereas I don't think Jota's as good holding up the ball.
Yeah. So with Cody, he hasn't started as well as he finished his last season. He scored against Wolves, and it was nice to get a good tapping at the back post, and he did that very, very similar. That comes to mind against Everton last season. Back post, bit of a poacher, which is great. But he hasn't started the way that I thought he would have. Race, do you kind of agree with Triller TV Live? Do you think Gakpo needs those minutes and starting in number 9 to get that rhythm back? Unfortunately, it's just a case that the league is kind of the priority. Nunez does seem like he's taking that spot now, but would you still kind of look for Gakpo to be that number 9 long term or short term, or just this game, and we'll see? We'll kind of reassess after that.
Yeah, I would certainly have him in my starting lineup as at number 9. And coming into the season, you look at the attack options we have, Gakpo, Nunez, Jota, Salah, Diaz, and you can throw Doak in there as well. I mean, someone was going to be unlucky to miss out and not get a run of minutes. And I think it's kind of been Gakpo so far. I know he's started games, but a couple in the midfield, not really his natural position. it's been a little harder for him to get into the side because I think he wants to play, either up top of that number 9 or sometimes can play a little bit on the left wing, likes to cut in and operate out there. He did that with PSV a little bit. I think I'm not worried about, his, his dip in form. I don't think, it's anything to say about him as a player. I think he's a brilliant, talented player. I think it's just been hard so far to get minutes in this team. And so I would certainly expect him to start this game up top and, hopefully can get a goal, get an assist or something, be involved. I think it just speaks to the depth that we have, and someone is going to just be unlucky to miss out, even if it's not due to form. It's just not due to their poor form. It's due to someone else performing really well, or just the rotation that we have. So I would definitely expect Gakpo to start and look for them to maybe just try and get him going. However, just kind of get involved in the game more. Because they know how big of a piece he is. And again, we knock on wood that injuries don't happen, but of course injuries are going to happen. And he's going to need to called upon at some point this season. So it's just, again, we talk about the depth and the rotation. We need all these guys getting minutes and feeling comfortable out there so that when they are called upon in a big spot, they can put in a good shift. So Gakpo certainly for me, I'm excited to see him, excited to see, assuming, that he's in this lineup. And I just worry a little bit that, talking about the starting 11, it kind of picks itself, which usually means that there's going to be a couple surprises that we don't see. So, whatever that may be, I don't know. But
Bobby Clark or someone like that.
Bobby Clark. I saw a comment of, I think it was Paul that said, Elliott on the right wing, DOAK on the left, and Jota through the middle. That's kind of would be an interesting one. But again, I wouldn't, pick that because I want to see Gakpo in there, on the, in the number 9 spot. So that would be my pick.
Yeah. So I think I agree. Gakpo is my number 9 as well for tomorrow. Considering that, so I'll stick with you, Race. Jota as your kind of left winger. Would you like to see him, or do you think it's still Luis Diaz still playing? I know we've kind of discussed about Curtis Jones playing all those games, but is it a risk to keep playing Luis Diaz?
Yeah, Jota's still the pick for me on the left wing. You look at a guy that getting a goal at the weekend. I mean, he's just a specialist at coming off the bench and being a real bright spark for us. And he's almost better coming off the bench than he is starting. Although certainly when he does start, it's not a bad option as well. Again, just kind of the luxury that we have at that position. So, Jota would be certainly my pick on the left. Diaz has been great this season and will start at the weekend at Tottenham. So, Jota is right in there.
Yeah. I think that's pretty standard. What do you think, Drew? You happy with Jota going in on the left side? And again, like I think, just sorry before you answer, coming back to your comment just a few minutes ago. It's that fluid kind of formation between Gakpo and Jota. They can actually swap places, can't they? So would that be kind of attractive to see?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And Jota on the left for me works. I don't think Liverpool fans undervalue him or underrate him, but I think he is underrated in the league. Maybe a little less so now, but I remember back when he was carrying the team in that semifinal against Arsenal, both legs, and especially in the second leg at the Emirates, he just absolutely destroyed Arsenal's defense twice. So I think in both cases, he ran off the left wing and cut in.
He did, didn't they? Yep.
Yeah. So I see him just picking up where he left off as far as that's concerned, and he knows how to score a goal. So wherever he is, he'll most likely pop up.
Yeah, I agree. He was in my left position of the front three. So there's going to be an interesting one. I think it's already kind of been confirmed, similar to the Kelleher news that Pep Linders released today in his press conference. So Ben Doak is going to be playing tomorrow. Drew, what are your thoughts about Ben getting another start and against kind of good opposition? I know he played, against Lask, but Leicester, top of the league, they're playing well. They've just come out of the Premier League. They've still got Premier League players playing in their team. Do you think that's a good test for him?
Yeah, I think he's going to be eager to get any minutes that he can, and he seems like the type of player that would welcome like a challenge like this. I think it's a good testing ground for him. I think Leicester is a quality team. Like probably most of us will know uh, the majority of their players that he's going to come up against, and really excited to see him. He's not afraid of a one-on-one challenge, taking on defenders. So I think this is a really big opportunity for him, and I think he's at least got 60 minutes in this game. We know Klopp. In this case, lenders won't have any qualms with bringing on Salah. All know Salah wants to start every game. So if we do need a goal, that's the easy substitution for me is, last 20 minutes, just throw on Salah if Doak hasn't been able to break the defense down. But I think this is a really exciting game for him to play, and hope to see him get a goal.
Yeah, I agree. He would be my right wing choice for tomorrow's game. I've brought up this comment. Just kind of let's have a think about it, because there's AFCON this summer, this winter, isn't there? So Salah's going to be going away for a number of weeks. I know there's Asia Cup games, which means that that Endo's going to be going as well for a number of weeks. Do you think it's really, really important? Again, considering the backup for Salah, that person gets the minutes, or do we think at that point Doak gets a loan? Should we consider that, or do you think he's just too good to be playing at that point for a lesser team? For a championship team, or should he be playing more games like this? Race, what do you think?
I said at the beginning of the season that I wouldn't mind seeing Doak go out on loan to get those regular minutes. But of course, with us in the Europa League specifically, I think that's, if we were in the Champions League, I don't think Doak would be getting, those minutes in Europe necessarily. I think that'd still kind of be Salah's spot or someone else. But, Europa League has stepped down in competition. I think, that you can give Doak that opportunity. And of course, these League Cups and FA Cups and stuff. I think it might be a bit of a waiting game to see, if we're still involved in the League Cup and of course the FA Cup, in January, if we're kind of bounced from those competitions early, and just kind of looking at the games that we have. I couldn't give you a straight answer if we should loan him out or not. Again, I wouldn't mind seeing him on loan. I would like to see him get those regular minutes kind of, because I think he's an exciting talent and I would be interested to see how he would fare with that. I do feel if they would have wanted to send him out on loan, they would have done that kind of before the season. But I think it's definitely an interesting thing to talk about. And of course, in January you have AFCON and whatnot. And I know it's all dependent on how far Egypt would go, specifically with Salah in the AFCON. So I mean, how many games is that he's going to get with the team? How many minutes? So once Salah's back from AFCON, then what's kind of the point of him just sitting on the bench? But I certainly get both sides to the argument, because Doak is, we see the talent that he has in the role and the player they can be in this side. So I think it's tough to say what my decision was. Again, I think if we are still involved in some of these competitions and we kind of need him, or we need another body in that position, I think we would keep him around.
Yeah. I mean, just a really interesting one from Triller again. Steve McManaman. Steve wasn't, when he was coming through, baby faced. He had a lot of competition at that point. When he broke through the team, it only just took a season being around the team, the first team, for him to make that impression and start getting those games. I think it's going to be really similar to what we would see with Ben Doak. There's a lot of Salah talk, isn't there, Drew, around whether he would be going. But thinking about the long-term prospects, do you think a player like Doak would benefit from staying around the first team, with Liverpool, or go on a loan and miss out on potential opportunities to play in Europe, to get that experience playing in cup competitions and going deep into those competitions themselves?
I agree with Race on this one in terms of the fact that we're in the Europa League gives him a lot more opportunities this year. And I also think that He kind of reminds me in the mold of Sterling, where it's like Sterling was 17 when he broke through into the team, 17, 18. And he had the talent and the ability and just grew in confidence, like had the run of games, was one of the main men, was able to develop, like, Suarez, Sturridge, SAS back in the day.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
so and it kind of reminds me of where we're at now, where we wouldn't be relying on him to do everything, where we could ease him into the team. So I think
yeah,
it's one of those moments that this season is really important for his development. And as far as Salah leaving in the future, I'm not sure that could happen in January. That could happen in the summer. But I think Doak really needs to stake a claim for in this moment of him stepping up, because I think he has the ability and the quality to be Salah's successor.
mm,
And it's really important that he shows it now, because if he does take these chances and really like takes the spotlight, then Klopp could have that in his plans of giving Doak a run. Otherwise, we're going to have more than enough money from Salah's sale to buy someone who could, just take the spot away from Doak and take the chance for him to break into the 11.
yeah, yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. We forget how young he is. He is only just kind of playing first team football, isn't he? At men's level. He's an exciting talent. I totally agree with the Sterling comparison as well, Drew. I make that on a regular basis. I don't know if you remember last week race. I'm pretty sure I asked everyone, "What do you think? Can Doak be as good as Sterling? Later on in his career, I think those goals should come. But the ability to run with the ball, beat his man, he's definitely got it. Maybe probably a little bit better than Sterling at his age. But Sterling had the goals in him. It's whether Doak can actually take it on to that next level. Steve McManaman as well, he would get those crucial goals. Can Doak actually do that? And the only way that we're going to find out is if he starts playing games. And I think tomorrow is actually a really perfect example to go against really good opposition and make a stake, claim something to put in Klopp's mind come January, whether Salah leaves permanently or when Salah leaves for AFCON, he has the absolute respect and confidence from Klopp for to play those regular minutes in the league in Europe. I don't think we'd actually play Europe while Salah's away, but those are certain situations. Semi-final could be in January, couldn't it? If we get that far in the League Cup, I'm pretty sure it's January, February time. So those are the conversations, and Doak needs to kind of take the conversation really seriously. So we're coming to the end of the stream, but I just wanted to kind of just bring up some starting 11s from the guys in the chat. Helia, thanks for your comment here. So just kind of looking at the starting 11 that Helia's kind of called out. So Kelleher, Basetic, which is an interesting one that we spoke about. QUANSAH, Konate, Tsimikas, Endo, Elliott, Gravenberch, and then Doak, Jota, Gakpo, which is kind of very, very similar to what we were all kind of agreeing on. For anyone in the chat, please, if you want to just, think about starting 11s for tomorrow, just quickly throw that in, and then we can have a quick discussion. But is there anything else that you would like to discuss there, guys? Potential key matches, key duels, I guess, that you think we need to kind of be considerate of. Do you think Wout Faes would score another couple of own goals for us tomorrow? Or, he'd come to his favourite ground, potentially?
I'll jump in and say I'm just not worried, but I think Vardy and Iheanacho can definitely cause our center backs trouble. The pace on Vardy, obviously he's getting old, but he kind of has that like halfway merchant where he's just sitting on the back line, really conserving his energy. Kind of reminds me of like Bale in the MLS, where you just throw him on because he can do like a few sprints in behind. And we know Vardy, he's scored quite a few goals against us, and I think I'd be having an eye on him in the starting lineup, or Iheanacho, who can turn on a random game and be amazing. But those would be my ones to look out for.
Yeah, I think one player that we haven't probably spoken about, and he started like a house on fire, is Casey McAteer. In the 7 games that he's played, he scored 4 goals. So he's an interesting player that we need to be considerate of. I know we're talking about Jamie Vardy, and he scored 3 in 9, a penalty on the weekend, wasn't it? When against Bristol, I believe. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. But Casey McAteer probably will be playing. He started really well. Do you think that's something that we need to be consider of? We probably don't know too much about McAteer himself, right?
Yeah. Another thing with Leicester too is that, and obviously they just got relegated in the Championship, but they are really, for the most part, a Premier League side. I mean, just being in the Premier League, and they were in the league for, what was it, 10 or so years? Of course, Premier League champions as well. So it's not your typical Championship side that you're facing in the League Cup. There's certainly, they know what it takes to beat a side like us. They can give us fits. Dewsbury Hall, that was another player I kind of want to highlight as well. He's been good for them this year. In the midfield too, and of course that's where our midfield is gonna have to be sharp there as well. I would say just don't. I'm sure they aren't taking Leicester any less of any less serious than we think. It's going to be it'll be a tough game for sure. But again, with the quality that we have, specifically up top, the attackers that we have, I think we should win. Obviously we're the better side, so expecting win. We'll see what kind of happens, but like goes to the stat mentioned earlier. We haven't won a League Cup game at home in regular time in quite some time. So just kind of like with the Europa League last week, it wasn't the most perfect of jobs, falling behind, but we came back in the second half, won that game fairly comfortably. Kind of what we're looking for with these rotated sides, just getting the job done. Making not too much of a deal about it. Of course, if you have to dip into your bench, that's not a bad thing. If you want to bring Salah on or Nunez, or you want to bring Van Dijk to shore up the back line, do whatever you have to do. But certainly hope that the first team that we throw out there, or the starting 11, does most of the job, and then we can kind of just pick up the pieces from there.
Yeah. And so we just kind of spoken about Dewsbury Hall in the 10 games that he's played. Interestingly, he scored 2 and set up 3 in the 10 league games that he's played this season, or the 10 games themselves. So he's going to be a threat. I think they're going to be playing their first team. We are going to be playing our second team. It's going to be really, really interesting. If we are going to kind of persevere with a second string lineup, we need to have a strong bench. But it's going to be an interesting one. Final thoughts from anyone before we kind of close off?
I'm just ready to go. Ready to see another midweek game. Great. Not much else to say.
Yeah. Drew?
Hopefully a comfortable 2-0 win for a change.
Actually, that's
no heart attacks.
What's your score prediction, Race? Do you think we'll actually win in normal time for the first time since 2016?
I kind of like that 2-0 prediction. I'm going to say 2-1. I think Leicester will get a goal. I think they'll have some energy, and they'll be, like I said, point to prove and wanting to score. So I'd say 2-1 win for us.
Cool. Okay, well, I'll round it off. I think it's going to be a 3-1. Let's go with our favourite scoreline for this season. 3-1. Paul Lindo, he agrees with me. So great news. I'd just like to say thank you for everyone that's joined on the chat today. Drew, as always, thank you for joining us today in the last minute. You're going to be on tomorrow, hopefully with some good news post-match. So, yes, fingers crossed, praying that we'll get a good result. Race, as always, thank you for joining me today. I'm your host, Charlie. I want to say thank you for joining us today. Let's hope for a good win tomorrow. Have a good evening, day, whatever you're doing, and we'll see you soon. We're back tomorrow post-match. Lovely. Take care, all.